Imagine for a moment that life is not a series of wins and losses, but a vast symphony, each note, each pause, a part of something greater than our understanding. Failure, then, is not a dissonance to fear, but a necessary chord, shaping the melody of who we are becoming. The silence after a stumble is not emptiness, but the universe drawing breath before the next crescendo. What we call setbacks may, in truth, be sacred invitations, opportunities to align with a rhythm beyond our control, yet deeply within our belonging. To fear failure is to forget that even shadows are sculpted by light, and that no movement in this cosmic dance is wasted. When we surrender to the music of our becoming, we begin to see that the very moments we resist are the ones that refine us. And so we awaken to this truth. Nothing in your story is accidental, and every note belongs to eternity. Failure has a way of making us feel small. It shows up in our lives like an unwelcome guest, loud, humiliating, impossible to ignore. And yet, if we're honest, failure is also one of the greatest teachers we will ever know. It humbles us. It strips away the illusions we hold about control, certainty, and perfection. It reminds us that life was never meant to be a straight line, but a journey of detours, switchbacks, and surprising discoveries. We don't grow in the glossy moments of effortless success. We grow in the trenches of our stumbles, in the messiness of not knowing, in the raw space where we're forced to reckon with ourselves. Think about the times you failed. Really failed. Maybe it was a relationship that ended, a business that collapsed, a dream that slipped through your fingers. At first, it felt unbearable. But if you look closely, you'll notice something miraculous happened in those seasons. Failure broke you open. It invited you to see yourself more clearly, to question what mattered, to shed the layers of pride, fear, and pretense you'd been carrying. It was painful, yes, but it was also holy. Failure is not here to punish you. It's here to prepare you, to teach you the strength that only comes from falling and rising again, to sharpen your vision, your resilience, and your compassion. It forces you to stop measuring your worth by outcomes and start measuring it by courage, persistence, and willingness. When we reframe failure as a sacred teacher, we stop running from it and begin to lean into the wisdom it holds. And here's the paradox. The very thing you're so afraid of, messing up, falling short, getting it wrong, is also the very thing that gives your life depth. Without failure, you'd never know the power of perseverance. Without mistakes, you'd never recognize the beauty of second chances. Without loss, you'd never taste the sweetness of rebuilding. Failure gives texture to our lives. It carves character into us the way a river shapes stone, slowly, relentlessly, and with a grace we can only appreciate when we step back and see the whole landscape. What if you began to welcome failure instead of fearing it? What if you chose to see each stumble, not as evidence that you're not enough, but as proof that you are alive, that you are daring, that you are willing to dance with the unknown? Because the truth is, failure doesn't mean you're off course. Sometimes it means you're finally on the path that matters. The next time you face it, and you will, pause and remember this. Failure is not the end of your story. It is the turning of a page, the deepening of the plot, the shaping of the hero who is you. And when you learn to walk with it rather than hide from it, you will discover something extraordinary. Failure was never here to destroy you. It was always here to reveal you. Failure doesn't take from you. It gives you back to yourself. We live in a world that convinces us failure is final. One mistake, one wrong move, and the story is over, or so we're told. That's why the fear of failure runs so deep. It feels like standing at the edge of a cliff, one step away from a drop you can't recover from. But here's the truth. What we call failure is never the ending we imagine it to be. It's a moment, a chapter, a pause in the unfolding of a much larger story. Life doesn't stop when you stumble. It doesn't close the book when you fall short. Life simply redirects. Think about nature. A river never apologizes for changing course. A tree doesn't mourn the leaves it loses in autumn. To us, those shifts look like endings, but they're really transitions. Of movement, evolution. What we call finality is just the rhythm of transformation, and your failures are no different. They're not signs that you've reached the end of the road. They're invitations to walk a new one. I know how hard it is in the moment. When something crumbles, it feels absolute. The relationship ends, and you're convinced love won't find you again. The job falls through, and you're sure your career is ruined. The dream collapses, and you tell yourself it's gone forever. But here's what time and perspective reveal. The end you feared was really a beginning disguised in unfamiliar clothing. Every no you've ever faced made room for a yes, sir, you couldn't yet see. Every door that slammed shut pushed you toward a hallway you didn't know existed. Failure only feels like death because we mistake the moment for the whole. We confuse the pause with the finale. But endings aren't endings. They're transformations in progress. Life is too vast, too interconnected, too beautifully orchestrated to let you stop at a single stumble. What looks like collapse is often construction. What feels like a detour is often alignment. And here's the miracle. When you stop seeing failure as final, fear begins to lose its grip. You realize you are never standing on the edge of a cliff. You are standing at the edge of possibility. What's ahead is unknown, yes, but unknown does not mean doomed. Unknown means alive. Unknown means potential. So, the next time you feel the sting of failure, I want you to pause and remind yourself, this is not the end. This is a transition. The music hasn't stopped. It's shifting keys. The story hasn't closed. It's turning the page. You are not broken. You are being reshaped into someone even more capable of carrying what comes next. When we let go of the illusion of finality, we begin to see failure for what it really is. A sign that we are in motion, that life is still unfolding, that there is more ahead than we can possibly imagine. And suddenly, failure loses its power to paralyze us. Instead, it becomes the proof that we are still in the dance, still in the story, still being written into something extraordinary. What feels like an ending is almost always the beginning of who you were meant to become. Silence has a way of unnerving us. When failure hits, there's often this stretch of quiet that follows. The phone doesn't ring. Opportunities stop showing up. You sit there with nothing but your own thoughts, and it feels like the world has forgotten you. We mistake that silence for emptiness, as if it's proof we've been left behind. But what if that stillness isn't absence at all? What if it's preparation? Think about music. A song without pauses would just be noise. The rest, the spaces between the notes, are what give the melody shape. The silence is what makes the music beautiful. Life works the same way. After a stumble, the quiet you feel isn't a void. It's the breath before the next phrase. It's space being carved out for something new to emerge. In those moments of silence, everything inside you begins to settle. The frantic noise of trying, striving, pushing, striving, pushing, it all quiets down. And in that quiet, truth has a way of surfacing. You start to hear things you couldn't before. The whisper of your intuition, the gentle nudge of what matters, the small but steady reminder that you are still here, still capable, still becoming. We're so quick to rush out of the quiet. We scramble to fix things, to fill the gap, to prove we're still in motion. But sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is stay in the silence long enough to let it teach us. Because in that space, you begin to recognize that your worth isn't defined by how loudly the world applauds you. It's revealed in the quiet confidence of knowing you can withstand the pause. Failure isn't always about the fall. Sometimes it's about what happens afterward, the waiting, the uncertainty, the silence that feels endless. But here's the truth. That silence is not your enemy. It's a sanctuary. It's the soil where resilience takes root, where perspective deepens, where courage gathers itself for what comes next. Now, the quiet is where transformation begins. Look back on your life. I guarantee the moments of silence, those stretches where nothing seemed to be happening, were the same ones that prepared you for breakthroughs you couldn't yet see. The silence after heartbreak that taught you to love yourself. The silence after rejection that pushed you to create something new. The silence after failure that reminded you your story was still unfolding. The challenge is not to fear the quiet, but to trust it. To trust that silence isn't empty. It's full of renewal, full of hidden movement, full of possibilities forming beneath the surface. When you learn to embrace those pauses, you stop resisting them, and suddenly they become less terrifying. They become part of the rhythm. They become part of the song. So the next time you find yourself sitting in that uneasy stillness after a failure, I want you to breathe. I want you to remind yourself, this silence is not abandonment. This silence is preparation. Life is not punishing you. It's tuning you, shaping you, refining you for what's to come. The silence after failure isn't the end of your story. It's the moment the universe draws breath before your next beginning. It's easy to believe that failure is random, that it shows up in our lives like some cruel accident, separate from everything else we're trying to build. We tell ourselves this wasn't supposed to happen, as if the challenge in front of us somehow slipped through the cracks of a perfect plan. But what if the exact opposite is true? What if the struggles you face are not interruptions, but threads in the larger design of your life? Think about a tapestry. If you stand too close, all you see are knots and tangles. It looks chaotic, messy, unfinished. But step back, and you start to see the picture. Every thread, every color, even the dark ones, has a place. Failure is one of those threads. In the moment, it feels jagged and out of place. But in time, you realize it was woven into your story with intention, connecting you to growth, resilience, and even to people and opportunities you never would have encountered otherwise. Your struggles are not isolated. They're not meaningless. They're part of a greater pattern that's unfolding, one you can't always see while you're in the middle of it. When a dream crumbles or a plan falls apart, it's tempting to believe you've stepped off your path. But maybe what's really happening is that the path is widening. Maybe you're being redirected into something far bigger than what you imagined. Look back on your own life. How many times did something you once labeled as failure turn out to be the very thing that led you to where you needed to be? The heartbreak that revealed your strength, the rejection that freed you to discover your true calling, the closed door that forced you to walk into a room that felt terrifying at first, but ultimately changed everything. You couldn't see it then, but in hindsight, those struggles were not random. They were aligned with something larger. And here's the beautiful part. Failure not only shapes you, it connects you. Every time you stumble, you gain empathy for others who are stumbling too. Yes, you begin to understand the shared humanity in falling short, the universality of struggle. It breaks down walls between us. That's why some of the most meaningful connections we form come through our failures, not our victories. We bond over the challenges, over the vulnerability, over the places where life didn't go as planned. The interconnectedness of struggle and purpose means this. What feels like your breaking point can also be someone else's lifeline. Your story of getting back up might be the exact reminder someone else needs to believe they can do the same. That's how life weaves us together. Your failures are never just about you. They ripple outward, shaping, teaching, inspiring far beyond what you can see. So instead of seeing failure as proof that you're off course, begin to trust that it's part of the design. Trust that even the hardest moments are threads being woven into something purposeful, something bigger than your own understanding. Because when you do, the fear starts to fade. You stop fighting the struggle and start asking, what is this here to teach me? Who might this be connecting me to? How might this be shaping the picture I can't yet see? Failure isn't a detour from your purpose. It's the thread that weaves you more deeply into it. We spend so much of our lives waiting for fear to go away before we take a step forward. We think once I feel confident, once I feel ready, once the fear quiets down, then I'll move. But here's the thing, fear doesn't go away. Not when you're doing something meaningful. Not when you're chasing a dream that matters. Fear is wired into us. It's the body's way of saying, pay attention. This moment is important. The goal isn't to erase it. The goal is to learn how to move with it. We get courage all wrong. We picture it as this bold, fearless state where we leap without hesitation. But real courage is quieter than that. It's not resistance. It's alignment. It's saying, yes, I'm afraid, but I trust this step anyway. It's choosing to take the hand of fear and walk forward instead of letting it drive. Think about any meaningful breakthrough in your life. Was fear absent? No. It was sitting in the passenger seat, whispering all the ways it could go wrong. And still, you moved. That's what courage looks like. Not waiting for fear to disappear, but refusing to let it decide the direction of your life. Amen. Here's the shift. Fear isn't always a sign you're in danger. Sometimes it's a signal that you're on the edge of growth. Fear shows up when you're about to stretch beyond who you've been. It's proof that you're stepping into a space where transformation can happen. When you start to see fear as evidence that you're aligned with something bigger, it stops being the enemy and starts being the compass. What happens when we resist fear is that it grows louder. We try to fight it, ignore it, shut it down, and in doing so, we give it more power. But when we acknowledge it, when we allow it to exist without handing it the keys, it starts to lose its hold. We begin to recognize that fear and possibility often arrive together. You cannot have one without the other. Imagine this. You're standing at the edge of something new, a project, a relationship, a change you've dreamed of but never dared to start. Fear shows up, as it always does. And in that moment, you get to decide, will I wait for fear to leave, or will I align with courage and move anyway? Because courage doesn't ask you to be fearless. It asks you to take one step trembling if you must, but stepping nonetheless. Over time, those small acts of alignment build into something powerful. You stop seeing fear as a wall and start seeing it as a doorway. You realize that every time you've walked through it, life has expanded, you've grown stronger, more resilient, more connected to who you really are. So the question isn't, how do I get rid of fear? The question is, how do I align myself with courage in the presence of it? Because that's where freedom lives. That's where transformation begins. Not in the absence of fear, but in your willingness to keep moving with it by your side. Courage isn't about silencing fear. It's about walking forward, fully alive, with fear as your witness, not your master. Life is always moving, always shifting, always inviting us into its rhythm. And when we step back and really look at it, it starts to feel less like a battle to win and more like a dance to join. Every moment, every joy, every heartbreak, every failure is part of the choreography. And the beauty is you don't have to know the entire routine. You just have to trust the step you're in. The fear of failure convinces us that one wrong move will ruin the whole performance. We freeze, worried we'll misstep, worried the audience of life is watching. But here's the truth. Even the missteps belong. Even the times you stumble, lose the rhythm, or spin out of balance, those moments are still part of the dance. They add texture, depth, and humanity. They remind you that perfection was never the point. Participation was. Think about the times you've been most alive. Was it when everything was flawless and predictable? Or was it when you risked something, when you leaned into the unknown? When you allowed yourself to be vulnerable and unpolished, when you stop trying to control the dance and start allowing yourself to move with it, life begins to unfold in ways you couldn't have scripted. The relationships that enter, the opportunities that appear, the wisdom you gain from falling and rising again, it all weaves together into a rhythm that's far too intricate to be random. There's a design at play, one that invites you not to fear failure, but to see it as part of the choreography. And the dance isn't just about you. Your movements affect others. Your courage to keep going after failure gives someone else permission to do the same. Your willingness to embrace the rhythm, even when it doesn't look the way you expected, and creates ripples you may never see, but that matter deeply. That's the interconnectedness of this whole thing. None of us are dancing alone. The beauty of this cosmic choreography is that you don't need to know the music ahead of time. You don't need to anticipate every beat. You just need to trust that even when the song changes, when the rhythm slows or speeds up, you have within you what it takes to keep moving. And failure, it's not the end of the dance. It's just a shift in tempo, a new step you're learning, a reminder that you are still in motion. So when fear whispers that you don't belong, that you'll trip, that you'll never get it right, I want you to remember this. The dance was never about flawless execution. It was always about presence, about showing up, about moving with what life gives you, about trusting that every step, especially the messy ones, belong to the greater whole. And maybe that's the most liberating truth of all. You cannot fail at the dance of life because the very act of moving, of showing up, of trying, of daring, is the dance itself. Failure isn't the end of the music. It's the beat that reminds you the dance is still yours to live.